Alrighty, well, it looks like we have a pretty full house. So thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to the FSC Data Creating Industry Insight webinar. We've got an expert panel with us today who I'll introduce in a moment. We'll be discussing a few things. We'll be discussing why good data is important for an industry association, what the FSC's data program will deliver, and how FSC members can get the most out of the new data dashboards. We're going to spend about 20 to 30 minutes discussing these things and a few other questions. We'll then give you a sneak peek of the new data dashboards. We'll then have time for your questions, which the panel will do their very best to answer. Send your questions through any time during the session via the Q&A function, addressing the questions to all panelists. We're thinking we're going to run for around 45 minutes, maybe an hour today, depending on the amount of tricky questions you've got for us. So all that said and the hygiene over, let me introduce our panel to you. We have, now this is in the order of my screen, but when I say your name, you might just want to put your hand up. So we have Anton Gardiner, Chief Actuary of Partners Life. Thank you. We have Michael Brown, Customer Experience Leader, Swiss Re. We have Ben Winterbourne, Analytics Director of Data Insight. Now, unfortunately, we're not joined today by Rachel Lynn due to unforeseen circumstances. Rachel is co-chair of the FSC's Data Working Group, leading the investment stream, with Anton, who you've seen already, leading the insurance stream. I'm Hayley Stroud, I'm project lead for the Financial Services Council, and I'll be your facilitator for this afternoon's session. All that said, let's kick into it, because you're not here to hear from me, you're here to hear from the team. I've got a question panel for each of you, so let's kick off with the first one. And Michael, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to take point on this one, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Thanks, Hayley.
Why is data important to you?
Yeah, look, I think data is important to me. It certainly could be summed up, I think, with one word, and that's understanding. I think data helps us to better understand customers' needs, but also the pain points and the gain points that they experience with dealing with us. And also, by better understanding that, then we can better understand our own business, and importantly, then inform the ways that we improve it. And if you think about data, data in its raw form holds little value. It's really about the analytics and also the visualization and the analysis that you apply to it. And that's where the power is, because then that drives better understanding of the problem, but also gives you the opportunity to make better decisions, better informed ones, rather than necessarily acting just on opinions. We're actually getting facts. And then I think also it helps with efficiency and lower costs, particularly if you're applying it to process improvement. So there's nothing that data doesn't solve. It solves everything. Now, maybe if I turn over to Ben, why is it important to you?
Thanks, Michael. So being at a data agency, we live and breathe data, and it's pretty much the lifeblood of our organization. So it's extremely important to me. And I think through my experience across multiple countries and multiple industries, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of data and how it's being used and how important it is to organizations. So from simple things where GDPR comes in and we need to know who's in the European Union, if we don't collect the right information and structure in the correct way, we struggle to do that. But now I've seen, great examples of it where you can automate processes and make claims more efficient, and remove and add those efficiencies to everyone's day-to-day working. And there's also, instances where COVID pops up and data becomes extremely important to understand what's happening and what we actually need to do about it. So I think this year has been highlighting the importance of data even more. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective on data. So maybe if I hand it over to Anton.
Cool, thanks, Ben. It's always disconcerting being the last in a panel when everyone's had their say, because you're struggling with what else to say. But I guess as an actuary, for me, like Ben, I live and breathe data every day. It's so important to me and what I do, and also the company that I work for. I think just a couple of things I would add. In terms of data, it's not just data, but it's good data. It's got to be robust data. It's got to be thoroughly checked. It's got to be credible. So it's not just any data will do, because garbage in, garbage out, as they say, happens with data as well. The other thing I would say about data is that it's not just a snapshot point in time. It also gives you trend analysis, which I think is so important. You can look at it over time to get, I guess, a picture of what's happening, not just at one point in time, but over a period of months, years, decades even. So, yeah, echo everything everyone else has said. Back to you, Heidi.
And I have nothing to add. I think the insights there is that data is really important, but it's got to be good data. And there's a whole heap of benefits that come out of it. And I particularly liked, Ben, your examples of the use of data outside of the financial services industry. But bringing us back to financial services, because it's what most of the Financial Services Council members' industry is. Ben, what do you see as the particular reasons that data is important to the financial services industry, and perhaps take us on a little bit to what the future might look like for data in the financial services industry going forward?
Thanks, Heidi. So I think we've already iterated that it's important for every industry. And I think it's, number one topic for most organizations out there at the moment. But I think specifically for the financial services industry, it's really important because, number one, it enables those functions and things to happen in the bank. And that's what we've collected data in the past to do, is to be able to make credit decisions, to capture information so that we can fulfill claims when they pop up. But why it's really important, it can be either your competitive advantage or Achilles heel. I think Michael's already touched on that in the past. So you can kind of use it to your advantage, or if you don't use it in the correct way, you can start to fall behind. And when you look at that in a customer perspective, you can start to have those disconnected conversations with the customer. And for financial services, when you've got all these bespoke products, and a lot of them can be in silos, it's really important to start having those integrated conversations with the customer so you can actually understand their position and what's going on. In terms of the future, I think, coming back to that point, I think data integration is going to be one of the hot topics. So if you're a large financial organization and you've acquired other financial organizations along the way, how do we integrate those siloed data points together so we can actually have those meaningful conversations with customers and also enable us to move forward? So if we do need to automate things going forward, Anton touched on it around garbage in, garbage out. How do we make sure that, if we want to start picking up on fraud in a more dynamic and machine learning way, how do we do that with the data and the way we're structuring things? So it all comes back to that data integration and the fundamentals, the non-sexy parts, really, I think, and the strategy. So if I hand that over to Anton after my talk.
Cool. Thank you, Ben. Cool. Second instead of last. Great. So in terms of why is it important to the financial services industry? So Ben touched on competition, I think, which is a good one. I think another one that I've been thinking of is around, I think, being more transparent with the data that we have across the industry. I think will lead to more trust for the industry. It'll lead to more credibility. We're able to show essentially what's happening within our industry. So I think those things are important. I think it's also around being able to have that conversation with New Zealanders. So specifically, for example, insurance, we'd be able to demonstrate quite easily how many customers have insurance, how many don't. What's the underinsurance within New Zealand? How's that compared to the rest of the world? Start having those informed decisions with data actually backing it, not just we think we're underinsured, we can't really prove it type of thing. So I think having those sort of discussions would be really important for the industry. Where are we going? I I think, as well as expanding the data set, which we are doing at the moment, I think having quicker access to data, for me, going forward, is going to be key. So at the moment, there's a bit of a delay in getting data, but I think the more you can have it real time, the more you can make use of it and the more informed decisions you can make. So that's where I think we're heading with data, as well as probably expanding it more as well in the future. Over to you, Michael, for your views.
Yeah, Anton, thank you. Yes. I echo quite a lot of those, really pertinent points. Interestingly, just the other day I was reading an article, and this sort of goes to a bit of a sporting event that's going on in Auckland Harbour for the next few months. That's the America's Cup, and this article was written by a very renowned journalist, well read, well thought, and basically said that the cup will be won on data. And it's not a case of actually having the fastest boat or the best team and all the training behind you, but it's the data and how you're analysing your performance, making those small continuous improvement adjustments to your game plan will ultimately seal your fate. And it's become a data race now rather than a sailing race. So I think there's strong parallels if we think about the insurance industry and the future going forward, where I think data will play a much bigger part. It's, if you like, our number one asset as an industry, because we're all about assessing, but also managing and minimising risk. And the way we do that through the data is going to be critical for the future, and how we can then apply that to the customer journey. And we're already, as an industry, well down the ways, looking at the onboarding, the underwriting process, using data there to help inform and reduce the amount of effort involved in customers acquiring the product. And there's opportunities for then ongoing engagement with them, and how we can then tailor our engagement, how we can start to better inform them of emerging risks. So we start to use predictive analytics to identify things and proactively reach out to people and demonstrate more value in the process. So I think, it's going to be an exciting future for the industry, particularly as we start to adopt more machine learning, and the algorithms and building these things. And this is where, Anton, the actuaries are going to be so important in building these massive algorithm data sets. And I think overall, with the use of that predictive analytics piece, we will be able to see more into the future, better forecast. When things like pandemic hit, we'll have a better understanding of what we're faced with and be able to react quicker to it. So lots of good things. But back to you, Heidi.
Wow, I feel newly inspired about the FSC's data program. So thank you, everybody. Which probably is a nice segue onto my final question for the team before we go into that sneak preview of the dashboards that we mentioned. The FSC's been on a journey over the last decade or so, I'd say, in terms of collecting data for our members and on behalf of our members, be that insurance or KiwiSaver data. Given everything you've talked about so far and those opportunities and what the future might look like, why do you think it was important for the FSC to have embarked on this journey of, I think, Anton, you mentioned expansion, Ben, you've talked about automation and the refresh. So why now? And maybe I'll start with you, Anton.
Yep, sure. Thanks, Heidi. I think it's almost a case of it was inevitable, it was going to happen. I think if we look at the world the last sort of 5 or 10 years, and we look at just the impact of data, big data, data science, all these sort of clicky terms you've heard, I think it's just a state of the times almost, that the amount of data that's actually out there in the world, the amount that's been consumed and used, it was just inevitable this was going to happen. And I think, and I don't want to get into the conduct and culture type of environment we've been in the last few years, but I think also just having that that more openness, that more transparency, with our customers and with New Zealand in general. I think it's just as I say, a sign of the times that the requirement for more data, for more openness, is just there now. And I think I talked before about the reputation of the industry, and I think the more open and transparent, the more you share, I believe the better the outcome for the whole industry in terms of creating that trust. And it has other benefits. So things like, just on the insurance side, if we're able to show out, for example, how many claims we pay for each product, we can show what the premiums are for those products. Customers can easily see, is that product actually generating a good outcome to me? And over time, you'll see the industry adapt to that, because products that have a poor outcome to customers will soon be not the flavour of the month. So industry itself will have to evolve and change to meet consumer demand. So I think all of those things are the reason why that we're embarking on this now. And I think it's well overdue. So I'm very excited about it. Michael, do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, just to add, I echo that. And I think also it's not a case of just getting with the times. And we're seeing a massive shift to digital, particularly as a result of the pandemic and things. And it's becoming a much easier way to transact. But also, I think it's more a case with the FSC and this working group that it's leading in the times. We're starting to, ask customers more about what they want, what they need. We're asking them to interact more digitally, particularly with advisors, and in making their role in dispensing of advice more efficient. We're automating processes, we're reducing effort and wastage, and all those sort of things go to what we're achieving with this new report and new system that's been built. So I think it's a really proactive move by the FSC to do it. It's reducing burden for the insurers, the way the information's collected. Again, automation is playing a big part of that. And then being able to receive the data, manipulate it, visualize it in the way that you see fit within each of the insurers is going to be, I think, a real game changer, and also, a benefit for its members. So what about you, Ben?
Yeah, so I think coming onto this project, it's been, really interesting to see what's important to everyone and what's been happening in the past. So I think it's the key around making sure we're all aligned and on the same page in terms of what data we're collecting, how we're measuring things, taking that legwork out of the things that have been on in the past and unlocking the trends that have been happening in the past. So have we seen things like number of claims increase over certain time periods and for certain products, and what the decline rates are? These kind of things we can start to measure and understand what's happening in the industry. Are we improving our experience for our customers if we see average time to process claims is coming down? It's a great news story. Are we seeing certain age groups where there's just a higher decline rate, and we can actually respond to that and go, okay, so are they understanding the product correctly? So I think it unlocks that competitive element, so understanding what's happening in the market, but it also unlocks that whole of industry view around how are we doing for our customers as an insurance industry and as a KiwiSaver and investment industry, really. So maybe back to you, Hayley. And
that's brilliant. Thank you, guys. This is an exciting program for the FSC, and it could only have been we could only have got to where we are with the data working group, the involvement of everybody in this team and from our membership. So thank you all. And now I'm not going to hold our audience up too much longer, because I'm sure that everybody on the webinar really wants to see that sneak peek of the dashboards that we've been promising. We are in beta testing at the moment, ready to go full release as at the end of December. So that'll be for January. But just before I hand over to Ben, just a reminder to the audience, get your questions in. The panel are looking forward to both the tricky questions and the perhaps the not so tricky questions. We got a few coming in already. If you do want to put a question through, use the Q&A function and address it to all panelists. And that said, Ben, I'm going to hand over to you to take us through that sneak peek.
Thanks, Hayley. So, as Hayley was saying, we've been going on a bit of a journey to discover what data we currently collect and also what data we want to collect in the future to make this market insights and information as usable and great for the industry as we can, essentially. So if we go on to the next slide. So there's two streams, as you may or may not know. There's an insurance stream around collecting metrics and information and data points that are relevant for insurance markets. And there's also an investment stream. So we'll talk about that afterwards. But essentially for the insurance stream, we've been trying to introduce these dashboards to essentially make the data that is being provided on a quarterly basis more dynamic and insightful and answer key questions. So instead of having to do the legwork yourself, we're essentially serving them up in dashboards that are always on, so you can always tap into that information when you need it. And you can start to answer kind of key questions around, is the market actually growing? And how am I doing compared to that market? So am I growing in line or am I falling behind the market? And how many claims are occurring for me versus the market? So am I doing better, worse? What's happening? So you can start to answer those market dynamic questions and understand how am I doing in this competitive landscape. So here's a bit of a taster of the beta version of the insurance report. And this is kind of the landing page. So it gives you those top line insights of what's happening. So every time you provide information, if you are providing information on a quarterly basis, it goes into these dashboards and produces these kind of outputs. So you can start to, on the left-hand side, use some of the filters to actually understand what's happening in the past, what's happening for different products, what's happening for different subtype products. So you can start to drill down into the information and really understand what's going on. You can also start to understand for different providers how that's looking and start to switch views from quarter on quarter and year on year to understand how it's tracking over time. So in the top of the dashboard, you can see the total market view, and you can switch toggle between market and provider to go, right, how am I doing and how is the market going? So are premiums going up for the market and how am I doing compared to that? The total covers and lives insured, is that increasing or decreasing? And new business and lapsed, am I winning or losing in those areas? And then below that, we've got some more information, some more bit of a drill down essentially, so you can understand. So on the left-hand side, we've got a bit of a waterfall from, right, this is my starting position and this is how I grew or declined to the end position for the quarter. So did I get more new customers? And that's what's driving the market. And how is the market dynamic going? And then below that, you can kind of see, well, what was my market share of those different types of activities? So you can quickly start to understand, were we gaining more new customers than we were losing, and what was driving our overall position? And then on the right-hand side, we've got two charts to just kind of quickly compare and contrast how we're doing versus the market and versus other providers. So all the information here, just to note, is a bit of anonymized dummy data because obviously this is sensitive information, so we don't want to provide that. But that top chart is giving a bit of a growth rate. So how am I tracking over time versus the market as a whole? Is this provider growing more or less than the market? And then you can kind of use those waterfall views to understand why is that and what's happening there. And below that, you've got a bit of a market share by provider. So you can quickly go who's winning and who's losing for a quarter or a specific quarter. So moving on to the next slide, I think I've touched on a lot of this information. So after that, we've got a bit of a drill down into claims. So this is a separate tab. And specifically focus on that claims information. So one thing to note here is in the previous dashboard, you could drill down into other providers' information because members are happy providing that information and being able to drill down and have a look at your competitors. When it comes to claims, that's not the case. So the security essentially locks this information down So you will only see your view and the market view. And here you can kind of start to understand how many claims are being accepted for me versus the market. What's my percentage claims accepted rate? How long is it taking me to process my claims versus the market? What's that claims ratio? So that top, again, gives you a bit of a snapshot, and you're able to toggle between market and provider, while below, again, you've got more drill down into what's happening and trends over time, which are really important to understand. Am I improving versus the market, or am I not, essentially? So you can see your claims frequency versus the market is a bit of a barometer, really, as to is this normal versus the market and what we should expect. And that accepted rate, again, you can see, are we in line with the market or not? And then you can start to understand what's happening. So once you have looked at those claims rate, you can start to drill down into the demographics in that right-hand chart to go, is it a certain age demographic? And that's why something's happening. What's driving those figures? And then you've also got that time to process versus market, which is quite an important I guess, barometer of how you're performing and how you're satisfying customers versus that market. So making sure that you're in line, at least with that market, to go, yep, we're doing a great job for our customers, really. So moving on to the next slide. It's a bit of an investment dashboard, essentially, is the next piece. So that's the insurance view. This is now moving on to the investment dashboards that we built specifically for KiwiSaver, with the aim to add on other products potentially at a later date, so we can have a bit more of a overview of what's happening in that investment market. So again, the investment dashboards are aimed at answering those key questions around, is my farmer members growing for the market? Am I attracting more members than the rest of the market? Am I losing fewer members than the rest of the market? So you can start to understand, okay, so how am I doing versus that market? So moving on to the next slide, it's a bit of a taster of, again, dummy data, just to mask the sensitive information that's in there. So on the left-hand side, we have our filters, so you can start to drill down into different products when they become available, essentially. You can select your comparison. So do you want a year-on-year comparison, or do you want to have a quarter-on-quarter comparison? Because obviously year-on-year gives you a bit more of a seasonal view of what's happening. You can go back in time, so selecting time periods and selecting different providers again. So very similar to the insurance dashboard. At the top, you've got your key top-line metrics and your points in time snapshots. So you've got your total FUM, how's that growing for the market and provider, and again for members, outflows and contributions, and how are all of these tracking, so you can switch between your provider and market and just quickly understand, am I doing better or worse than the market, essentially. Then again, the charts below are kind of trend analysis of how is that tracking over time. So how is my market share tracking? How's my defection rate versus the market going? So am I losing more? And is that just because I'm a default fund, or is it something else? And then in terms of the growth rate versus the market, you can understand FUM and members, and you can also compare the two to go, my members are growing quite a lot, but my FUM's not quite, so what's driving that? And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you've got your contributions in and out, so you can understand, am I getting my fair share of what's coming in and versus going out? So you can kind of understand what's driving that FUM at a total level. So moving on, I think I've just touched on that information again. I think that's, there's a couple other dashboards in there, but here we're keeping it quite top line. So just want to give you a bit of a taster. Some of you may receive this information in the coming days. So I'll hand back to you, Heidi.
That's awesome. Thanks ever so much for sharing that, Ben. And for those in the audience that are familiar with the FSC's current statistics, you know you currently receive either a point-in-time Excel spreadsheet or a point-in-time PDF with very static data that you can't do anything with, you can't manipulate it. So this is a huge step forward, and hopefully everybody in the webinar can see that. So the go live is as at the end of December, with launch in January. We're in beta testing right now, so that's awesome. Look, we're up into the Q&A phase. of the webinar. We've got a few questions coming through, but I encourage everybody to keep them coming in. I might just pick a few at random and just, if I say fling them out, that's probably a bit too aggressive, but if I just pass all them out to the panelists, and you can decide if you want to answer or pass it on to anybody else. So let's start with one of the ones that are a nice, easy one that's come in. And I think someone here, Michael, has picked up on your Australian accent, and the fact that you're from a reinsurer. Because they've asked, how does New Zealand's, FSC New Zealand's data work compare to what you've seen overseas?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So one of the, I guess, the opportunities working for a global reinsurer is the fact that I've been able to work in other markets. And as part of my exploration and trying to understand what the market dynamics and also the drivers are, I would typically go to the industry reports. So the first question I ask my colleagues in other countries is, what's available? Can you send it through? Help me to understand what's going on. And to my surprise, across continental Europe, the UK, Asia, even South Africa, it was surprising very little is available, and which I was sort of surprised at. In some cases, there's certain data that you can get, typically from the consulting houses, and you pay for it. And it's not always regular, it's not always timely, and it's not always as insightful. So I look at what the FSC is producing here, and it's been amazing. Even your old reports are more granular than what I've been seeing even back home. So it's a bit like the football. You guys have been leading the way for a long time, and we just, head between our tails and all that sort of thing. But it's been, I think, really quite exciting, I guess, being at the forefront of what you're doing. And, the data is so much more granular. It's far more timely. We operate 3 quarters, in some cases, in arrears, where this report is produced literally, weeks. And with the new format, this new electronic format, it's days, literally, that it'll be available. So you're making decisions real time and doing your analysis real time. That's going to be really powerful. So it's a big credit. You guys are doing a fantastic job here, and I think setting a best practice model for many others to follow.
Wow, that's certainly something, hey. We've got another question here. This one's a bit of a technical one, so I might pass it your way, Ben. And it's around the publication of sensitive data and around user management as well. The person has said, it's great, but how are you going to make sure that data doesn't get out, and the wrong data doesn't get out into the wrong hands?
Yeah, thanks, Hayley. So I think Michael touched on it. So here we're collecting very granular information, and with that, security does raise its head, and I think rightly so. So one of the great things about this process is essentially Data Insight acting as a bit of a Switzerland and neutral ground, where the data comes in, it's held in a very secure database where no one else has access. And then we publish it into the dashboards where we can control what level of information that users essentially access. And when we started off this process, we went through a bit of a exercise of going, what data points are sensitive and what's not so sensitive, so we can understand what do we need to lock down and what is everyone else happy to share. So we kind of have that collaborative way, but also bearing in mind that security is of utmost importance. So yeah, it's that combination of understanding what everyone else is willing to share and they're happy to do so. And then also that security level that we have in place where we can restrict what users see. So they're only able to see their provider and the market, for example, and so it's aggregated information that they're not able to see any other provider's information. So that's how we do it. There's a lot more technical aspect to it in the background, but that's a bit of a simple summary of it.
That's awesome. And we've had another question come through. It's similar. So I'll just touch on that one now. It's, is the information consumable via API or only from dashboards? And I might just expand on that question as well, because I suspect that it might be also, if I'm not an FSC member, how do I get access to the data? What can I get access to? So there's a couple of questions in there. Ben, did you want to answer that technical one around is the information consumable?
Sure. So at the moment, what we're doing is the information is consumable within the dashboards. If you can get access, if you can't get access to that information, we can send you the information securely. There's no API at the moment. Obviously, this is only the first phase of what we're doing. So, in later stages, we can start to add on more information, open up different ways of consuming that information. So I guess this is just the start. So I guess watch the space.
Awesome. And does anyone want to tackle the second part of that question, which I think, Ben, you've alluded to there, which is, I'm not an FSC member. What do I get to see and how do I get access to it? And if not, maybe it's an unfair question. I should be answering it. Hey. So I will take that one on, which is the information is part of your FSC membership. So FSC members, this is a value add service for FSC members. Only FSC members provide data, only FSC members receive data. At a broader market level, the Financial Services Council will continue to use the facts at a total market level, but not at that granular level that you're seeing in the dashboards that Ben presented earlier. Awesome. We have a couple more questions added to the list. So we've got a handful here. Let's just nail a couple of those. One here is, I see you have new business numbers, but will the dashboard show any lapses or complaints rate by product? Anyone want to take point on that one?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. So definitely you saw new business numbers, but also in that waterfall diagram, you would have seen the lapse numbers, the discontinuance numbers, the terminations, the expiries, and other components that make up the movements in the in-force premium. So definitely there's lapse data there. The complaints one, though, is an interesting one. I'm not sure how you collect that one, Heidi. Is that a separate exercise or, and reported? But yeah, I'm not sure.
Maybe I can jump in there, Michael. So during this process, we went through a bit of a design exercise right at the beginning, and we brainstormed those kind of data points that we want to collect. And complaints was definitely something that came up. So it's on the radar. It's just around standardizing the approach for the industry and kind of making sure that everyone can collect that information. So what we've done for this phase and the subsequent phase in January is prioritization of metrics, making sure that everyone can collect that information now. And I think, this, as I said, was just the start. So future could include those kind of level of metrics. So it's on the radar. At the moment, it's just potential phase 3, down the track.
Yeah, awesome. And we have got a number of things in those future phases. Hey, Ben. So. Yeah. I guess for the audience, if there's anything that you'd like to see or you think your organisation can provide, then send that information through to anyone that you see on the call here or to the FSC at fsc@fsc.org.nz, and we'll try and incorporate that. Look, we've got time for probably a couple more questions, so let's handle one of the ones that's come in, and this is an interesting one. KPMG has recently asked for insurance and claim data to do analysis on, with a large cost for organisations. What's the overlap between the KPMG work and the FSC work? Now, I'm going to open that up to answers in a moment, just acknowledging that we can't talk about anything that's competitive or anything like that on this webinar. But has anyone got a view on that? Does anyone know anything about it?
I can respond. I'm not sure I can fully answer, but I can respond to that. So I'm aware that KPMG has sent a proposal to a number of companies within the New Zealand market for a collection of data and analysis. What I can say is that the work the FSC is embarking on, or has embarked on the last 12 months around this data expansion, is completely independent of that. There is no overlap. What you might find is that some of the work we are providing with FSC will answer some of the questions raised in the KPMG proposal. But all I can say is that there's no overlap at the moment in terms of the two organisations. The KPMG proposal is completely separate from the FSC.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for taking that one, Anton. And now I think we just got time for one more question. And actually, I might take the conch on this one, as it were, and ask the three of you a direct question, which is, what's been your biggest aha moment over this journey on the FSC's data program? So if you could share that, and look, anyone take the first stab.
I'll have a go at the first stab. It's not really an aha moment, but I think coming into this, we're all members of a organisation, the FSC, but we're all competitors as well. So for me, coming in and having these open discussions, I think what was quite revealing for me and quite encouraging was that we're all prepared to come together to benefit the industry, to enhance the reputation of the industry and our organising body, FSC, through just collaboration, collection of this data, working together. So for me, that was really just a bright spot on this whole journey. So I was really impressed with that we all can put aside our competitive streak for the betterment of the industry. So I think that was really encouraging for me.
Anton, you read my mind. That was very much the central theme I was also having. And it was, I was taken back by, I guess, the can-do attitude that the working group adopted. It rallied around this shared goal of just let's make the reporting better. And the way they worked was very collaborative, but very pragmatic in its approach, and it just got on with it. I found that pleasingly refreshing, I guess, from the industry perspective, because people did put their competitive and protectionism sort of activity to the side and really just jumped in at the task. And what outcome has been achieved, I think, is really a credit to the working group, the members, and also the FSC. So yeah, that was it was a really nice working group to be involved in. What about you, Ben?
I kind of echo the same sentiment. So I think it's a bit of a cop-out from me, but coming from outside of the industry and attending these workshops and taking you all through this journey and being on it with you, it's been amazing to see what level of data you're all willing to share, and the access that you're granting each other and all coming together to share that information. So yeah, I've just been really amazed by that, and yeah, it's been a pleasure being involved in the project and understanding how you all collaborate, really.
Wow, what an uplifting way to finish the webinar, hey? Well, Anton, Ben, Michael, thank you so much for being on the panel this afternoon. To our audience, thank you for joining. I hope you stay part of the journey, and really that's it from the webinar today. So with that, have a great rest of the afternoon, and thank you, everybody.